I'm Spook Span.
And I'm Brian Stevens.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment,
a podcast about how chasing big whitetails has become a religion to us. The plan is to get into the head of one of the most successful whitetail hunters on the planet
and to share over 40 plus years of hunting experience with you. Big bucks, life, and America. Here we go.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment. I'm Brian Stevens here with Spook Span, known as one of the best whitetail hunters on the planet. Spook, how you doing this morning?
Doing great, man. It's a beautiful day here, sunny and supposed to be warm, so turkeys will be gobbling here pretty soon.
You know what? Speaking of turkeys, we've already got birds strutting at the feeders and in our food plots down here in Florida, and I'm telling you, it's I'm getting the bug real quick.
Yeah. It'll be here before we know it.
Well, today we're going to do something fun, and we're going to talk about a particular deer that I think is right over your shoulder there, called T-Rex, a deer that's an epic story and epic hunt. So why don't you get into that, story with us, talk about the leading up to the hunt, identifying the deer, hunting them, and all that good stuff. And I'll ask you some questions along the way, but every time you tell me the story, I love it. So I know people are going to enjoy it.
Well, one thing that a lot of people have been asking on social media and different places is, they want to see certain bucks and hear stories about it. And you and I have been talking about this. So we decided to start out with T-Rex, which is a really fun story. And they're all fun stories, but I don't know. I just think this one's kind of exceptional. And it's just such an amazing buck. And we had a big lease. Me and a couple other guys, my buddy Ryan from Yeti and Mark Hatcher had a big lease in Oklahoma. And it was up in northern Oklahoma and actually next to public hunting, which kind of made me nervous. It was a big cattle farm, cattle ranch. And it was the most unusual place because the first time I pulled up on it, I'm like, it looked like it was nothing but pasture. It was just like everywhere. It was just out of the 10,000 acres is like probably, I don't know, it seemed like 9,000 of it just wide open pasture.
Wow.
But when you got to looking off of the sides of the rolling hills, there was these drainages that were all wooded and thick and that's where the deer were at,
That's like South Dakota. You got a lot of that. If you've hunted South Dakota and you got a lot of those big open crop fields and those drainages and crevices that hold a lot of deer.
The thing that made this seem like at first glance made it more difficult is there were no crops. They just had a lot of cows, a ton of cows. So you were hunting around cows all the time, and which is nice it can help you with approaching a stand or covering up scent or certain things you could get away with, but there was one big alfalfa field in a creek bottom that was probably 30 or 40 acres. So a lot of deer used it and we hunted around that quite a bit, but it was a real unusual thing that T-Rex, most of the activity or trail camera pictures, there was a farmhouse in one corner on the northwest corner of the farm. There was a farmhouse and a barn lot and, just a typical Western, horse corrals, all that kind of stuff. And that's where we stayed. Okay. Well, most of the sightings and trail camera pictures we were getting of T-Rex were right behind the house within, everything was probably within less than a half a mile circle, And so we had known about T-Rex for 2 years. Actually, we had a guest the year before I killed him, Chuck Wicks, who's in the country music world, had been there and actually filmed him and had actually had a mishap and he got away. So he didn't get a shot at him.
And this is at T-Rex?
Yeah, it was T-Rex.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah. So they got good footage of it. It was during rifle season, and actually what happened is the cattle farmer come in, and he had this horn on his truck that played some tune, and that's every time he come in to feed the cows, he'd get on that horn,
Yep.
Well, they're watching T-Rex bedded, and he can just see his horn sticking up out of the sage.
Yeah.
And then the farmer comes in blowing the horn, and runs him actually towards Chuck. But the problem is these, elevation changes, and he just can't. And it was hard to, when you watch the footage, it was hard for him to get on it. So, anyways, he gets away, and that was really the only time anybody had a really good chance to get him. And he was
let me ask you, Spook, real quick. I mean, how much different did he look the year before, and how much had he changed? Okay, my bad. Go ahead, brother.
No, that's where I was going. So he was probably in the 180s as a straight typical the year before. A lot like what he looks like right now, except brow tines look very much the same. And, I immediately went to strategizing on T-Rex for the next year.
Okay.
And the guy that helped us with that, as far as, checking the cameras and those kind of things, we had multiple conversations. He lived there close about, what he thought was going on. And I said, I believe that T-Rex knows when we're there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he stays so close to the house that I just think he knows what's going on,
Yeah.
He's like, absolutely. He said, I think that's part of the problem. Well, he had actually seen him in the summer in the bean field on the public hunting, which is scary when you get into the rut. And then the neighbors across the road probably had 200 or 300 pictures of him, and they were hunting him, which is scary.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we had, the best, biggest piece to hunt on, he wasn't always on it.
Yeah.
So, there was just a lot of strategy that went into it. The stand that we had initially set up was a double set lock on. The problem is it was down in one of those cuts deep in the bottom of it. And these heels had shelves on them. So these deer would walk these shelves, but the bottoms were flat enough and nice enough they would use them. So there was rubs and scrapes around. But the problem is it was set up for a southwest wind, which, we get a lot of, especially out there. But the problem is we never got a daylight picture of him on a south wind.
Okay.
Anytime and these are some of the things that if you really pay close attention to your trail cameras, you can learn about a particular deer. We'd get nighttime pictures of him, but the only time we would get a daytime picture of him was on a northwest wind, which is a front moved through, got him up moving and, earlier. And so we would get pics and, trying to decide. It was about a 10-hour drive and just going back and forth and trying to decide, when to go and when to take a chance on him, because he hadn't been like that consistent.
Yeah.
And especially
which makes it tough.
Yeah. Especially in the rut, you might get occasional passing by picture, and so we're into November, and I had planned a hunt in Saskatchewan with Scott and Steve Esker. And so we were going to be gone like 8 or 10 days. Of course, I knew what was going to happen. I mean, it's just like,
I know where you're going.
I called it, and I was just like, I know he is going to show up in the daylight, like while we're there. Well, we fly into Saskatoon, and I mean the wheels are screeching on the plane, and I turn my phone on.
Your phone's buzzing.
And it's going ding, 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 and it's all daylight pictures of T-Rex that day.
Oh.
So a front had moved through. T-Rex came in that day. He came in at like 8 o'clock, 12:30, and 4:30 in the afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 3 times he's in the camera. And I'm just going, oh my goodness. Next day, get up to go hunting. Ding, ding, ding. He's on there again the next morning, again the middle of the day, again that evening.
Yeah.
And I am literally just like about ready to claw my eyes out. And my buddy there that's helping me with, keep the cameras checked and everything, watching the property. he's kind of teased at ragging me,
Oh, you
He's
know
like,
he is.
oh yeah, you just had to leave, And this was mid-November, and we had a good hunt in Saskatchewan. It was fun. Killed some pretty good deer, and Steve actually killed a really cool mule deer with a drop tine, which was cool.
Nice.
But so 3 days in a row on a north wind, T-Rex comes in 3 different times of the day, morning,
Interesting.
midday, and evening, which had never happened before.
Yeah.
We'd never gotten that many daylight pictures. So we get home. Of course, you know what happened. Get home. It's warmed up.
Of course.
And I mean, not just warmed up. I mean, it's in like the 80s.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't stand it. He'd been on camera. And so I went and I hunted for 3 or 4 days. And this was basically the weekend and the week of Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So I was, watching the weather intently, and probably shouldn't even have been hunting, but wasn't pushing it. Wasn't going in. I wasn't even going in there to that spot in the mornings.
Yeah.
I was just hunting it in the afternoon because it was really hard to get to. And we had been driving like a half moon into a spot to park and then walking in from the west. Well, me and Spencer had more conversation about the fact that we just thought he knew what was going on. And I could see there was a front that was supposed to come through on Thanksgiving night.
Okay.
And so I decided that on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, it was warm, and I just got up that morning and went in about 10 o'clock and put up a ground blind. And
what made you put up the ground blind versus
so just because the south wind out of the lock on wasn't working because he wasn't coming in the daylight on the south wind, and on the north wind, I felt like I was so exposed, and even though we were using ozonics, when you're down in that low area, if we'd have been up on the ridge or even the side of the ridge, but there just wasn't. It was all pastures on top, so it was.
Yeah,
you just about had to either had to fix a place in the head of one of those draws to get up out of it, or you just had to get down there in it. And most of the buck sign, there was a lot of buck sign in probably a 200-yard circle down in that cut. So I said, well, I'm just going to, there was a, and of course all these drainages have, when the water washes down them after big rains and stuff, they got rocky bottoms to them.
Yeah.
So I decided to get on the opposite side of the drainage and put that ground. There was just a little shelf there, and put the ground blind in. And of course, went to great pains to camo it in. I mean, just maxed it out. I cut one of the things I like to do, if I can find one, is cut a maple, or especially an oak or a cedar, that's probably about, big as your forearm or wrist, fist. And then it's got a lot of good bushy limbs on it, and then trim the limbs up to the height of the windows, or maybe, you may have to trim a few up to the height of the top of the blind, and then set it right in front of the blind. And then, of course, you got to find a way to anchor it. A lot of times I'll take a rope and tie it off. And what that does is it breaks up that dome look of the blind. And it also hangs out in front of the blind so that it gives it a 3D effect.
Yep.
So that it looks like when you're sitting back looking at it, you're looking into the shadows under a tree instead of just looking at a big, looking at it camoed up like a duck blind. Sometimes duck blinds can look just like a square box, and even though you've got them camoed up, you've got it all compacted onto the blind. It just looks like from the air, if you fly it from an airplane, and we've done this before, it just looks like a brown or black box,
Yep.
And so in order to prevent that, you got to mix up your camo colors, which means cedar, oak, beech. Beech is something that you'll never hear anybody talk about.
Why is that?
Because nobody uses beech limbs to camo anything. It is the best deer blind, duck blind camo there is, because it's a light orangey leaf, and it breaks up that black box that I'm talking about,
Okay.
and
All right.
gives it dimension, and it just breaks up that box. So
Yeah.
I like to mix cedar, beech, maple, and oak to diversify the color, so it doesn't just look like a box, and then just get back and look at it and see
Yeah.
what you think
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
needs and adjust accordingly. And then I like to get on the inside and take my snips and cut out my filming and shooting spots. But when you've got that canopy hanging out in front of you, it allows any black spots that might be your windows to just look like
Shadow.
it's just a shadow.
Yep.
And so it's perfect. Of course, we usually try to wear black, but you don't necessarily have to when you've got it set up like that. You can wear camo, black,
Yeah.
either way. It's also really nice on the cameraman. It's so much nicer. He can set up on a tripod or freehand if needed, or monopod, which we used a lot of.
Yeah.
Monopods are awesome because they're
No, love
very,
them.
very, you can move around so much easier than a tripod. And just with scent. So so my plans are, I know the front's moving through on Thursday night, Thanksgiving, and I know the wind's going to be blowing right out of the northwest, which is right
Yep.
towards the direction we expect him to be coming. And so we get it all, and then I took a rake, just a hard ground rake, and raked my path out, a path all the way to the house, that was a bigger job than putting the blind up. Taking my snips, cutting any limbs off, and just cleaning out a clean path all the way to the house. So no more getting in the truck and driving around and coming in from the west. We're going to come in from the north, and which would be downwind of the blind. And I decided I'd get all that done. It was going to be 85 that day. Front's moving through on Thursday. So I'm going to drive home and surprise Marty and the kids for Thanksgiving, because they think I'm going to be there hunting. So I do. I drive all evening and half the night. I think I got home about 2 a.m. and got a little sleep. Got up the next day and had a big Thanksgiving with the family, and Thanksgiving dinner was awesome.
Nice.
And our plans were I was going to pick JD up on the interstate on the way back, and his wife Tammy was going to meet us and drop him off, and then we were going to drive that evening and that night and be ready the next morning after the front and move through. And so sure enough, we get to about the Oklahoma line, somewhere in that vicinity, and we go through the rain front. The rain's on us for probably an hour, get probably an inch of rain that night. And then by the time we get to the farm, it had quit, and it was probably, by the time we unloaded that night, I don't know, like 2 a.m, it was probably 30 degrees, And I told JD, I said, we're going to park behind the barn. We're not even going to pull up to the house. We're going to carry our stuff in the house. Don't turn on any outside lights. Don't let the storm door slam, nothing.
Yep.
And I said, we get up in the morning, we're going to do the same thing. No outside lights, no nothing. We're just going to get up, sneak down in the blind. We'll get in there 30, 45 minutes before daylight and just, get set up.
Yep.
And we did. I don't know. I just had the feeling it's just everything was coming together.
Yeah.
And I could just see the plan coming together. And of course, the weather being the biggest part of the plan.
Absolutely.
And, we got in there, got set up, got the ozonics set up, and just, get quiet. I'm, kind of got adrenaline flowing, even though I'm kind of tired from all the driving and not much sleep. And I don't even remember. It's probably 7:30, 8 o'clock. The sun's coming up, and there's some, the light's beautiful.
Yeah.
And when I'll be excited when you get the T-Rex hunt on the 11th Commandment YouTube page. It's going to be really, I love for people to see it, because when he comes in, it's just one of the most beautiful sights of my hunting life. JD wants to do a little cutaway, the light's gotten good and you can see, so he's wanting to do a cutaway, and I'm kind of like, oh man, I didn't say anything because I was always appreciative when he initiated, hey, we need to do this,
you got to tell the story,
and I always liked having doing those things while they're happening rather than going back and doing cutaways. I mean, I liked real time, everything. If you can get the real time pulling the trigger or whatever it is, it's just so much better. And so I did whatever it was we were trying to do, just bring everybody up to speed on where we were at, what the plan was. And I said, man, I'm going to lay my head back on the blind for a minute and just close my eyes. I'm like, my eyes are just burning. Mm-hmm. And I just laid my head back. I literally barely touched the blind, and JD still had his earbuds in and hadn't turned anything off yet. He said, I hear something coming. And I just, eased up and looked out the window, and I said, yeah, here comes a doe. And the leaves it's funny, it had already, that morning, it was 25 degrees. And
leaves were crispy then.
Yeah, it had already gotten crispy from, even though we had not rained the night before. So it was already crispy. And I mean, just had that feeling, that you could just tell the humidity was low, the barometric pressure was where it needed to be.
Deer were going to be moving.
Yeah, it was just everything. Knew. And you're like the day after Thanksgiving, really you're into a time period where bucks are starting to probably run out of does or haven't been with a doe in a day or two, maybe, because we're getting to the tail end of the rut. Yeah. And so they're marching, So I got a lot of comments. I told JD, I said, we're going to kill that deer this morning. I said, well, we're going to kill him today or tomorrow. I'll just put it that way. He said, you think so? And it was really exciting. JD was like a kid in a candy store because he had just started filming for me. And this was our first real hunt together. As far we had been hunting some, but I just mean this was when it was starting to get serious. And he was in Saskatchewan, also. And so we had, not that we hadn't been hunting together. It's just this was when we were in like the serious, Midwest whitetail mode. And I think at that time when JD had started working for me, the biggest buck he had ever seen was probably 140, And so when we get these pictures, it was real exciting to him, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I had been picking on JD some too, through the course of our trying to figure out T-Rex and get him. Because we'd be in a stand, I'd say, I think I see him, or I was just messing with him, I was trying to see how he was going to react.
Yeah.
But anyways, I said, I looked up on the side of the hill, and it was so amazing. I'd give anything. The problem was we couldn't really film out the side of the blind because I had it just open in the front. And he was coming off of that steep, rocky hill, and every time he'd take a step forward, his body would drop down, and those drop times were just going like this.
Oh.
Just rocking back and forth every time he'd take a step forward, and I was just like, oh, my goodness, here he comes. I said, I ain't kidding this time. And he knew just in the difference in my demeanor and,
you're getting in kill mode.
Tone. It was just like, it was really him. And she came right there in front of us at like 18 yards. And the wind is just, you're just like, this is the true test of whether your setup is going to work or not.
Correct.
Because she's right there in front of us.
Yeah.
And there was a little 6-pointer, 1.5-year-old 6-pointer, just aggravating. So she must have been coming in or about to come in or something, because he was just all over the situation, agitating T-Rex, and T-Rex would bow and stab at him a little bit and run him back. It's just like the deer was just like a little kid,
Yeah.
And all this time you're just like trying to figure out exactly when you're going to make it happen. All the while, everything was so beautiful that morning. I wanted to film. I would have loved to have filmed him for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
But when he got up there closer and that little buck started back down there, and I was like, if I keep messing around, he's gonna.
Who knows what could happen?
Yeah, he's gonna run him up the side of the hill and not come back, or they're all just gonna, kind of bust out. How they can do when things get. So I just, had to go ahead and take the shot. I actually I don't know what, through just the course of the excitement and just everything that was going on, I hit him a little bit high. I actually hit him in the backbone, and which it was a somewhat of a weird angle because even though I was in a ground blind, the elevation difference, and he was kind of up on that shelf, and where we were at was a little awkward. But anyways, I shouldn't have hit him high, but I probably just released a little bit soon or misjudged the distance just a little bit. But anyways, I hit him high, hit him in the backbone, and he just fell, And of course, we're so excited. I jumped out of the blind real quick and got another arrow in him and finished him off as quick as I could. But it was just and just sheer joy, of. I mean, you can't even, it's just it's hard to describe if you haven't, if you don't have the same passion or you haven't had the experience, but just for all the planning and discussion and thoughts and dreams of making it come together on a deer like this and all the planning I had done in my mind over a 2-year period was just priceless. Of course, I called Marty and, was just ecstatic to tell her what had happened. She couldn't believe
absolutely.
We got him. I just left, the evening before, and then we had him on the ground already. And then I was really tickled to call Spencer, the guy that had been helping us. Spencer was an Oklahoma game warden that had been helping us with our setups and overseeing the property and checking the cameras and all that. And I called him, and he wasn't too far away, and he had that feeling too. He knew the plan because I had been talking to him about what the plan was. So he felt like we had a good strategy. And then when he said, I knew when I saw your name on my phone, I knew you wasn't calling for, he said, I knew it was either really good or really bad. But he was there really quick to celebrate with us. And then we just really had a full day of just enjoying. And then that evening, there was a big hill there with the river bottom, and we actually waited all day for that sun to get down just in the right position to take some epic pictures.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah, and that sunset, that western sunset, and Spencer, got him checked in for us and scored him, and he grossed 221, and just for a deer like that, he put on those three drop tines. Between what I think was his 5.5-year-old year and his 6.5-year-old year, and
so in 1 year he put on all that trash and all that. That's it just look. Not to say that you wouldn't have killed that deer at 5.5 and we'd all lost our minds and been so happy, but by waiting a year. A deer of that caliber, what can happen in 1 year when they get from 5
exactly.
to 6?
And we didn't admittingly, I'm not going to sit here and tell you we did it on purpose.
No, I get it.
Yeah, it was kind of accidental. He just made it through the season. And I didn't really get out there and hunt that much, hardly any the year before. I only hunted a few days the year before. But Chuck and Mark and Ryan had hunted there some, and they didn't get a chance. It seemed like maybe one of them may have seen him one day 1,000 yards off or something, but nobody got him. And then, I think it was just. But then when we saw what he turned out to be, the next year, obviously my mindset, I went into a whole another mode as far as how serious I was going to be about spending. Really, I'd committed the whole season to T-Rex if that's what it took. And so it was just and we had a good year that year. I killed a couple other good deer that year, and I killed another good deer after that I found later, and but T-Rex was just the way it all happened. And I really felt like that we really paid attention to the trail camera pictures, the times, the weather, and I kind of went for it. Everybody thought I was kind of being too aggressive with putting the ground blind up and expecting to kill him immediately out of it, because anytime you change anything in their, in their home core area, normally they're going to figure it out. They never knew anything was there, nothing, and so, and then, depending on the ozonics, and I have a lot of people ask me about ozonics, And I mean, it does have its place, and they're not paying me, or they used to sponsor me years ago, especially after that happened. And but it was a tool, I think, that really made a big difference. Can I sit here and say that the doe wouldn't have smelled us and he wouldn't have smelled us because of the weather and the perfect day and all that? I can't say, but all I can
Yeah.
say is there was about a 10-mile-an-hour north wind blowing straight at both of them, when I pulled the trigger. And so I just don't
Look,
see us getting away with that.
I've used Ozonics myself. You turned us on to Ozonics
Mhm.
years ago, and I'm in the same boat. I mean, if you've got a tool that's going to help you, and I've seen it used multiple times and success. And one thing on that too, we were hunting in Alberta, and obviously you got two people in the tree.
Mhm. Mhm.
I had one morning, one Ozonics going. Deer walked 60 yards in front of us, and that that wind was good. She stopped in her tracks. She knew something wasn't right, but she got a little squirrely. The next morning, I put two Ozonics up
Mhm.
right by my camera guy, right by me, walked back and forth,
Yep.
same exact wind, had no clue that we were there. And so that to me
Exactly.
was probably the convincing day that it truly has a place and it can work.
For sure. And I mean, that's exactly very similar to the story that I have about going from one to two. And even at times, get into a situation when you're in lock-ons or ladder stands and lock-ons or camera sets, the wind's swirling so much and changing so much that me and JD started using three cameras. I mean, I'm sorry, not cameras, but ozonics.
Yeah.
And it's, because we just try to get just a solid
No
360
matter where it
coverage
swirls or
because the
goes. Yeah.
wind's swirling. And I can't tell you how many times they've been calling for a certain wind, and you get up there and that's not what it is,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
it's just switching every few minutes. Because especially if you're that's the hardest part when you feel like you need to be down in a low area or a hollow and these hills and stuff all around you. That wind will just bounce off and switch, and so a lot of times we use three. Most of the time it worked. I mean, I've got other stories and tales, but when it always worked the best, I mean, I can almost say 100% of the time is when I'm in a ground blind with just the front window open,
Okay.
or I'm in a redneck with just like the two front bow windows open. What I do in a redneck tower stand, I super glue Velcro to the
Yep.
top of the blind,
Mm-hmm.
and I put Velcro on those onyx, and then I just
Stick it
stick
up
it up
there.
there, and it's perfect.
Oh, that's a great tip.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, I've done that hundreds of
No.
times. And could I say that just hunting out in a tree, it's worked every time? No, I mean, you get a 15 or 20-mile-an-hour wind, and you get two guys up there, and I don't think you can get anything that's going to work 100% of the time. It's
Yep.
just sometimes it's just not going to come together. The wind's going to bust you, and some of those old does are the worst in the world about messing up the world. But it works enough of the time where it's definitely worth using, and especially if you're in a ground blind or a tower. And say, well, why don't you just leave the windows closed when you're in a tower? Well, I don't want to have to deal with opening the window
Movement,
with
noise.
4 or 5 does and a couple little bucks or whatever the situation, any deer
Yeah.
or the big ones walking in, taking a chance on having to get the window open. I'd rather just open the two bow windows, have the ozonics going, and
Yep.
not have to worry about it.
Yep.
So that's the way I choose to play it.
Yeah. So I'm going to rewind back and
Yeah,
go
yeah.
back to T-Rex and a couple things that you said that I don't want to get overlooked
Mm-hmm.
because you can want it as bad as you want, but you did things that I think sometimes we all maybe in the past has overlooked. And that is you can have a plan, but it's put in the effort and timing it. So look, it's moving from a lock on to a ground blind because you
Mm-hmm.
thought that would be better. So you made that adjustment, but
And that
then
was
you had to take
the most bold
sure.
decision of the whole thing.
Yep.
Yep.
But then now you got to take the time to make sure the ground blind has enough concealment because like they don't like change. Okay.
Yeah.
So you take the time to do that. Then you also take the time to rake out a path. Okay. To get in and get out, like you've talked about. You didn't turn on lights. You didn't make noise. You had to change different things that
Just
you
change.
just
We
you got to
changed
think through in the effort.
every single part. Everything that we did, we changed.
And
Everything
those
that
are the
we was
things that,
doing, we changed.
yeah, I mean, the weather clearly played a big part of it, but
Yeah.
yet it played a part because you knew the weather was going to change. But then you also had to deal with the wind, knowing when he was showing up and using the cameras to help you determine and
Right.
connect these dots. And so those are things that obviously went into a lot of that effort and planning to be able to have that beautiful morning where he came into a
Yeah.
set that, was different.
Yeah. And I think that almost if we'd have left out any one of those details, I feel like could have very easily messed it up.
Well,
I
yeah, you
think,
walked in that morning and it was cracking leaves. You don't know how close those other deer were bedded. You
yeah,
could have blown everything out.
yeah, and that's why the trail needed to be raked out, and so that, take your time, leave early enough where you can walk really slow. I actually, turn. I have a little flashlight, and I put my fingers over the lens, and I usually just focus and keep it pointed straight down, and I have my fingers over, so I've just got just enough light to
Yep.
see my way through, and I go slow enough that I'm not stumbling, or just don't get in a hurry. Also, I don't want to get too hot and get sweaty, and just take your time. The good thing for us on that particular hunt was going it the one of the best things is getting to the blind. It was probably, I don't know, 500 or 600 yard walk or
That's a little
further.
bit of a walk. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was all downhill. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
helped. Not, just take your time, don't get in a hurry, you don't get sweaty, and just ease in there. And so, yeah, I just think, I don't know, I don't feel like I can put enough emphasis on how important it is to get in and out as quietly and undetected as possible. And some people say, well, if it was the wrong wind, how do you know you weren't going to get busted on your walk in? You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. You just got to decide. It's just times you got to go for it. I didn't feel like there was nothing that told me that he was bedding in that. Those hollows kind of made
Where
a
that wind
turkey's
would
foot
go.
there, so
Yep.
where they all came together. And I didn't think there was nothing that made me think he was bedding right in there
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that close. I thought he was bedding on the opposite side of the ridge because it was rougher and rockier and thicker and more cedars, and I just felt like that's where he was probably
Yep.
bedding. So I wasn't worried about getting busted just walking in. And you're always taking that chance that you'll bust a couple of does or something, and but that can happen regardless of which way the wind's blowing or what's happening. Sometimes you just have to have a little. You can make the best laid plan can get messed up by bad luck.
Yep.
And but that was just one of those mornings where we got in there super quiet. It was just, and there's nothing worse than walking to the stand and getting almost to your stand, and you're just like, oh, man,
Yep.
and you're
Well,
just like, oh, it just
it was
crushes
it's
my.
it's
It's
brutal, but
so painful. It's like you
it
just
is
took a
painful.
knife and went like
Oh,
this. It
but if you get
drives.
there early enough, and if you try not always, but sometimes things can settle down, because if that doe doesn't know what it is, and
Exactly. And
so yeah,
especially during the rut, it's a
yeah,
lot less, of a problem if it's during the rut, because bucks are just so amped up. I've seen does blow and buck come running in,
yeah,
in the rut. So yeah, it's not as big a deal in the rut, which goes back to, again, why we don't hunt mornings when it's not rut most of the time,
yeah,
just for that
yep,
reason. But yeah, those were, like you said, just getting that trail cleaned out, not having to get in the truck in the quiet. If we'd have got in the truck that morning, he'd have been able to hear us on the dirt road, pulling into the gate, blah,
cold
blah,
morning,
blah,
you can hear everything.
Yeah. And I just think that was as important as anything,
Yep.
and I think that was a big, a big part of it.
So if you were to take and rank T-Rex, it's hard to do. I'm going to put you on the spot
Yeah.
of quality of deer, experience of hunt, what went into it. I mean, he's got to be top 5, top 3. Like, how would you rank him?
I would probably put him second behind the
Second.
Kansas buck.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because yeah, just all the things I just said, the beauty that, I mean, you know, it is what it is. A lot of times these bucks come in, it's low light in the
Yeah.
evening, and we get them on camera, you know, but sometimes, you know, your lighting isn't as good. I mean, that morning was just perfect, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Yeah.
perfect, and just a cold, crispy north wind, Midwest November rut
Yeah.
morning is just, you know, it's what we all
Yeah.
long for. And that was just, it was the perfect day. I mean, it really
Okay.
was. It was just the perfect day.
That's awesome. All right, we're going to have JD on at some point to talk about, you know,
Yeah.
the filming side of things and tell the other side of Spook. But
Yeah.
give me a little bit of sense and everybody a sense of JD, clearly one of the biggest bucks, you know, he'll ever see in his life.
It was
The
funny. I
hunt,
don't
the
know that
filming it, like tell me about what Jake was going through JD's head
yeah.
before and after.
I don't know how he got it on film after, well, at least the parts after, because all I could hear, and I don't know that I can mock this. I know I can't probably do it justice, but he was going, oh, oh. I don't know whether it was I think it was a cross between a laugh and a cry, and he couldn't get his breath. He was just like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it, you know. And it was really just such a priceless
I love that.
moment. Yeah, it was just, the whole thing was just, you know, just ecstatic. Just, I don't even know how to explain it. Just a joyous, exuberant
Oh,
feeling, you know, to just
yeah.
take an old deer like this that had this kind of, you know, just quality to him. And, you
And
know,
he's a smart deer too. You had to outthink him, Spook. And that there's a lot
I
to
think,
that.
I think so. I think there was some things we had to do. That's why I just felt like we were at
Yeah.
a point where we were going to have to make some real changes in our plan. And that's where the kind of like a lot of the satisfaction or gratification comes. Like you didn't, you know, we didn't just go out there and sit down and get lucky. You know,
Yeah.
we had a hard plan in place. Our original plan wasn't coming together like we had hoped. Would it have if we'd have stayed with it? Maybe, maybe not. But I felt like this plan was a lot better. I knew we were getting into the time of the year where you're going to start having colder, crappier weather. So you got a blind there. You can, you know,
Yep.
stay
Sit longer.
concealed better. And so
Yep.
even though if we'd have gotten into, you know, even December and later parts of the year, I think we still had a good setup and a good plan.
Yep.
So, yeah, it was just, you know, this is one of those stories. These are the ones we love to talk about. We don't like talking
Absolutely.
about the ones, you know, the 80% of the time or 90% of the time when it doesn't come together. But this one did, and made me feel so much better about those 3 days. He came in 3 times in a
In
day,
Canada.
3 days in a row. 9 times he came in 3 days,
Oh,
and I was in Saskatchewan.
yep.
So I don't. Yeah, if I'd have went that season and not killed him, or somebody else had got him, or something like that, I would have really just been super down on myself for being gone. And really, that's why most of the time, I don't make plans to book hunts during November.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I just leave myself open to be flexible to whatever comes
Yep.
up. Because most
Yep.
of the time, like right now, you would be planning a hunt for November.
Correct.
Well, if I plan something right now, I know I'm going to find, you know, a couple of my target bucks that I think are going to be good bucks this upcoming year, and I'll find out about a couple more. I can't be flexible on that deer and be there when I need to be there if I plan 2 or 3 things. And I think that's one thing that's different. You know, most all your hunters that are serious about it, and your guys that are, you know, even TV hunters and different things, they're planning all these hunts and places to be from beginning to end. And, they're on such a schedule that when something special comes up or special opportunity or a big buck or whatever, they can't lay in there with it and be flexible with the weather and the
Yeah,
moon
it's hard.
because they got to go off on another hunt. And
Yep.
so I think that's a big part has been a huge part of my success is being able just to have a clear schedule in November, especially, and be able to adjust according to what we're seeing.
Yep. Well, and the great thing about the cameras today is having the cellular camera and getting real-time pictures and not even have to have somebody go in and check the pictures for you while you're out of state and all of that. It does give us the ability to adjust into real-time situations. And that's a beautiful
For
thing.
sure. For sure. I mean, it's the cameras, it's really bothering me that some states and some game and fish agencies think that it's a bad thing or gives you an unfair advantage because we are steadily losing hunters. It's getting harder to get our young people involved and love to, enjoying the hunt because there's so many options now with all these different entertainment routes that kids can go. It's just hard. It's getting harder to get them to, get them into hunting. And I feel like we have to do things to make it more fun and more interesting. And I just think trail cameras are a big part of it. I think they add such a entertainment. I don't know if entertainment's the right word or not, but just
It's a connection thing too, Spook. I mean, I hear
it
exactly.
is.
So
It is.
So I've got my son who is now in his early 20s, is bow hunting, loving to hunt. And in Georgia, we have that little piece of property, we have cameras, and he's constantly send me pictures, Dad, when they come in. And then you can talk about that deer. Here's why we may want to shoot this deer. Here's why we may not want to shoot this deer and give him another year.
Exactly. So it's another thing. It's also an educational tool.
Yes.
And you're saying, and you can look at the deer and say, this deer's 3 years old. We really should let him go, and they get it. They understand that,
and he's done it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so, and it helps us identify a deer because a lot of times you can have to make a spur of the moment decision on a deer. And if you've seen the pictures of him before, you're like, oh yeah, that's, that's the J hook buck. He needs another year,
Yep.
and it's just, but for kids, I just think it's like you said, it just adds a dynamic to the experience and gets them. If you just tell a kid that you think there's a big buck there, or we might see one, or we might not, or if you can show him a picture, even if the deer's been on the camera one time, it gives you something, gives us something, and it gives them something to look forward to, and to really focus on. I don't know. I just think that it's just so much more of and two, from a herd management standpoint, why are we using these cameras? We're using these cameras to identify the biggest animal that we think we would have an opportunity to hunt, which would most of the time be the oldest, most mature buck, which is the one you want to take if you can. And it's going to allow you to, let those, give you the mental capability and just prepare you to let those other deer pass. So a lot of those other deer, that's what we're trying to do anyways, is raise the quality of our experience and our herd. And so where is the downside to using a trail camera?
Look, and people are going to start going to the 11th Commandment YouTube page, we've got, and I'm going to rewind you back, we've got a hunt on there that if you remember when I was doing the Chronicles and we came and we hunted and we were going to hunt hook. Remember that on the Kentucky farm? We were going to hunt hook, good 5.5-year-old management deer. But then there was another buck called Dagger. He was just a crazy, 3
Yeah.
point, but big gnarly dagger and everything.
Yeah.
And so, we had seen Hook and he was coming in and he disappeared. And the next day it was raining. And all of a sudden, of course, Dagger's coming in and he's not the buck that was as pretty, but we had pictures. We talked about it before the hunt. And you're like, look,
Exactly.
if you see this deer, we got to get him out of the herd.
Mhm.
And we end up shooting him great footage. And he was, when you get your hands on him, he was the perfect deer to get out of the herd, not just
Yeah.
genetics, but you made a good point. He had, what was it, a 14-inch, just gnarly, big, rounded one horn that could have killed
Yeah.
another deer.
Oh, for sure.
It was
For
an
sure.
awesome
And
hunt.
my guess is he probably had killed one or two. And I mean, and that's why these cameras are so that it added a level of enjoyment to me when I started using them. I saw the first ever trail camera I saw was called Trail Cam, and it used 35 millimeter film. I saw it advertised in I believe it was North American Whitetail. Like, man, I don't even know. Was it the 80s maybe?
That's way back there.
I didn't know a single soul that had one, and I couldn't wait to get my film developed every time I would,
of course,
check it, and it just added a level of excitement and enjoyment for me. And then when they, just kept making them better and better, and now with the cell cams and the videos and all that, it's just, I mean, it's so much fun. I mean, first thing I do every morning, I woke up this morning, reached over and got my phone, and season's closed, and looked at my trail camera
Absolutely.
pictures. I've got some bucks that are starting to shed and they're coming in. I had one this morning. I could see he shed both his horns. I got two that shed one horn. And so, I just, kind of keeping up with, see if they look healthy. And I put the buck muffins out after season, and they're hammering them, just hammering them. And, I tell you, I love that concept. And that buck muffin is a 200-pound, it's basically like a 200-pound cattle block, comes in a tub. And I take mine out of the tub, and it's got 27 or 28% protein, and among other vitamins and minerals and different things. But it also has some kind of garlic-based ingredient in it that's supposed to help with ticks. Yeah. And ticks are really hard on deer. And so I'm excited about these buck muffins, and they're eating them, and it takes them 3 or 4 months to eat one, which gives you something out there all the time that's nutritious. And this is the most important time after hunting season closes, is one of the most important times for deer to find some nutrition, because most everything is just, here we are in the winter. There's not, the browse is not very good right now. Most of the food plots are eating the dirt. All the crops have been harvested. And this is the time of year when deer struggle, and they're basically just eating the ends off of limbs and sticks and leaves. And so giving them something that can help them, be better prepared when horn growth starts and when they start having fawns and those kind of things are just, I think are super vital. So I really like this concept. I've seen a couple of different versions that's come out, and but that's the one
we're
going to
try it.
Now.
We're going to try it down here in Florida and see. And Grant said this, and you said this, is finding things that deer are not getting around you, especially if you're hunting, near other properties. And so that's definitely going to be something we're adding.
I think you're going to be very happy with it for sure.
Okay.
I would think down there it would be an epic tool.
Yeah. Well,
because you got virtually no row crop down there. You just got palmettos and,
we got some food plots and they're hitting it hard now, but still that you got to have a variety of things, and they don't have anything like that buck muffin. I know none of the guys around here are doing anything like that. So I'm excited, brother.
I like it. And if it was just from the nutrition side, I would like it. But the fact that you're telling me it's got something in it that'll help with ticks, and ticks, Grant's told me, like he said the other day, ticks are one of the worst things for a deer that there are, because, and a lot of people don't think that much about it. They just think it's an evil that we can't really do anything about. But I actually think we can help, and you figure if I just cut half of them out it would
Absolutely.
be tremendous, you know.
Well, we need every inch of bone on the deer down here in Florida we
Yeah.
can get. You know, the other thing too that Grant said, and our biologists that we've worked with down here, and we're going to start adding a protein mix that's made. But he said, look, this protein mix from down in Okeechobee and Walpole that they make has some garlic and other things to help with the parasites. So he's
Exactly.
also
Yeah.
like helping from within the deer and the parasites, and then the garlic from the ticks. If you can combine those two things, he goes, that will help your deer herd so much, especially down here in Florida with the
Right.
combination of those two things that we'll be doing. So
Yeah.
no, we're looking forward to it. Well, Spook, man, what a great story. And we got so many more of these to come. And one of the things that, you know, you and I have talked about that we want to start doing is encouraging everybody to go to the 11th Commandment Instagram page and start asking us questions.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We want to hear what you guys want to know about, what you'd like to hear, what you'd like to see, what's different that we could do. I really like this idea of taking these different bucks and telling the story, and maybe help you. Maybe you pick up on a little something that you could use sometime after a deer you're chasing. You know, hey, it don't have to be a 221. It could be a 5-year-old 135 8-pointer that's, you know,
Absolutely.
and I've seen, you know, I've killed some of those old bully bucks here in my food plots here at home, and you know, I have to pull out all the strings on. You know, the deer's brain is the same if he's 5, 6, 7 years old. He doesn't know whether he's a 130 or a 200, and
That's
so, you
exactly right.
know, that's what you're dealing with. And so, yeah, we want to hear the questions everybody has and what, you know, what you'd like to see. And we love getting questions, and we'll try to give everybody what little I know about it, and hopefully it'll help them somewhere down the line. I actually got a really nice uh, email this morning from a guy out of Canada that I met in Florida a few years ago at the pool. And he just has been, you know, picking my brain for a couple of years on different things that he could do in Canada. And
Yep.
I've coached him along, and he sent me a thank you
Wow.
email this morning. He killed his 2 biggest bucks the last 2 years over basically using some of the tactics and ideas that we had talked about around the pool, and things that he had texted me about and said, hey, what about this? What about that? What should I do here? What should I do there? And I give him my ideas, and he has been taking those to heart, and he's killed his 2 of his biggest bucks, his 2
Man, that's
biggest
awesome.
bucks the last 2 years. So that's awesome. And it
Yep.
was good hearing from him this morning. And that was all the way from Manitoba. So that's pretty
Nice.
cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
good. Well, that does it for today. Thank you, Spook, again. And please, you know, share, like, comment, give us some feedback, and God bless again, you know, our troops, military, first responders, police, and thank you guys for tagging
Absolutely.
along and giving us this opportunity.
Yeah, be sure and check out the 11th Commandment YouTube page. We're real excited. Brian's been working real hard on it. I'm really appreciative, and thanks, Bud, for getting that going. We're really excited about that, and we're gonna have a lot of good things on. We're just getting started. Brian's got, you know, a lot of his stuff on there from years past, and starting to get, you know, a lot of my shows on there, my old stuff and we're gonna try to, you know, continuously create new
Yep.
content. Go on the 11th Commandment Instagram page. Give us your questions. You can also go on my page, Spook Span and Spook Nation, and, you know, ask questions, and I'll try to write them down or copy them, and, you know, we'll read them off here on the podcast and answer them for you as best we can. T-Rexes, bye.